Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the 2020 Postal History Symposium, sponsored by the American Philatelic Society, the American Philatelic Research Library, the National Postal Museum, and this year by the United States Philatelic Classic Society. We welcome all of those who have joined us from all around the world. Our presenter for this keynote session of the 2020 Postal History Symposium is Scott R. Trepel, President of Robert A. Siegel Auction Galleries. So to begin this keynote session and the 2020 Postal History Symposium, we start with a few opening remarks from each of our sponsors. Here representing the United States Philatelic Classic Society is Jessica Rodriguez.
Hello, and welcome to the Postal History Symposium. On behalf of the United States Philatelic Classic Society, we are excited to welcome you to this event. Although we wish to be joining you in person, we are thankful for the opportunity to have shifted this event to the online format. First and foremost, I would like to thank our co-sponsors, the American Philatelic Society and the National Postal Museum. They have been integral to helping shift this event to the online format. This year's theme is Postal Innovation of the Classic Era, Evolution Leading to Modernization. From stampless delivery to prepaid delivery, private mail carriers, and provisional post offices, this year's theme celebrates the innovations and innovators which contributed to the development of the modern postal system. I would also like to take a moment to thank our keynote speakers and presenters, many of which, if not all, are members of the United States Philatelic Classic Society. Scott Trepel, Diane DeBlois and Robert Dalton Harris, Gordon Eubanks, William DeWitt, Anthony Gallagher, Fred Gregory, Patricia Kaufman, Yamil Corey, Ken Lawrence, Jim Milgram, Tim O'Connor, William Schultz, Mark Shorts, and Steve Walski. We would like to thank you for your flexibility and contribution to this event. We are looking forward to seeing each of you in person when it is safe to do so. On behalf of the United States Philatelic Classic Society, we hope that you enjoy this event.
Thank you, Jessica. Back in 2006, the idea for a Postal History Symposium was first conceived when the Smithsonian's National Postal Museum partnered with the American Philatelic Research Library and the American Philatelic Society. It was then that the idea of a symposium focusing on postal history research was born. Here to speak on behalf of the Smithsonian's National Postal Museum is its director, Mr. Elliot Kruger.
Greetings. As the director of the Smithsonian National Postal Museum, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 11th Postal History Symposium. The museum hosted the first of these symposia in 2006, and the most recent, the 10th, in 2018. The theme of the latter, World War I and its immediate aftermath, recognized the centennial of the armistice. Susan Smith, the museum's Blunt Research Chair, is currently working on the publication of papers from this event. Links to select papers from the first through the 9th symposia can be found online in the research section of the museum's website. The topics vary widely from postal transportation to the imagery on stamps, from the post during military conflict to its role in commerce. This week's virtual symposium examines a wide range of postal innovations from the creation of the post and the earliest stamps to developments as various as those in transportation and routes to diplomacy. The papers and exhibits presented this week will illuminate 250 years of the post in North America. My hope is that in addition to answering questions, they will raise many more. Although the National Postal Museum is currently closed, I would like to invite you to visit and to do research using the museum's library, archival materials, and collections when we reopen. We should all make the most of this opportunity presented to us by the approach of the 250th anniversary of the country's founding to help others appreciate the insights that can be derived from philatelic materials and methodology, to encourage them to consider the role of stamps in promoting American identity and community, and to elucidate for them the centrality of the post in American history. I look forward to learning more about all of these this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. As a founding sponsor of the Postal History Symposium, the American Philatelic Research Library, with its worldwide collection of over 90,000 items, serves as the research arm of the American Philatelic Society and philatelic researchers everywhere. Its goal of providing resources that foster and support philatelic research, in this case, postal history research, reinforces its commitment to meeting the research needs of its members and the philatelic community, as well as the continued growth and development of this symposium. Here to speak on behalf of the American Philatelic Research Library is its president, Mr. Ken Grant.
Welcome to the 11th Postal History Symposium, hosted by the American Philatelic Society, the American Philatelic Research Library, and the Smithsonian National Postal Museum, and sponsored by the Classic Society. This 11th symposium is the first one to be held virtually. What exactly is a virtual symposium? I thought I'd look at those two words. Symposium is a word of Greek origin and means to drink together. It was the post-dinner part of a banquet where the attendees sang, danced, recited poetry, and engaged in lively conversation. In ancient times, participants in a symposium were expected to bathe and groom themselves before attending these revels. Virtual is defined as almost as described. In an article I once taught on language, virtual was called a weasel word. It earned that reputation because, for example, when an advertiser says his dishwashing liquid leaves dishes virtually spotless, he's really saying your dishes are going to have some spots. You won't be able to have all the experiences that you might at an in-person symposium, but the opportunities to benefit and learn will be just as real. You will discover the speaker's depth of knowledge and impressive scholarship. So now, what do we have when we put these two words together, a virtual symposium? Strictly speaking, you are about to participate in an event where you are almost in a position to drink, sing, dance, recite poetry, and engage in lively conversation while at your cleanest and tidiest. But since it's virtual, no spirits will be uncorked, and you will not be required to belt out any songs, bust any dance moves, smack down each other in poetry slams, or display your sharpest wit. Also, bathing and grooming are not mandatory. You are free to enjoy yourself to the fullest as we explore the aptly named theme, Postal Innovation of the Classic Era, Evolution Leading to Modernization. Let the revels begin.
Thank you, Ken. The American Philatelic Society, the largest society devoted to the study of philately in the world, is a proud and supportive founding sponsor of the Postal History Symposium. With its worldwide membership and primary goal of educating and promoting the hobby to all, its role in support of the Postal History Symposium is both essential and fundamental to the future of philatelic research and the future of the hobby. Here to speak on behalf of the American Philatelic Society is its president, Mr. Robert Ziegler.
Good morning. Together with the American Philatelic Research Library and the Smithsonian National Postal Museum, we at the American Philatelic Society are presenting this Postal History Symposium. I'm Bob Ziegler. I'm the president of the American Philatelic Society, and I want to welcome you and everyone to this very special Postal History Symposium. Postal history is a special branch of philately. Perhaps for frustrated historians, it is the study of how mail systems evolve and change as the times and technology change. This symposium has been done 11 times since 2006, but this year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's different. We are presenting this program in a virtual format. There will be 15 speakers in this symposium, 3 per day for each of 5 days of this event. These speakers will represent some of the most prominent and knowledgeable philatelists, postal historians, and researchers in the United States, and for that matter, in the world. Each of our speakers will devote their presentation to some aspects of our theme, which is postal innovation of the classic era, innovation leading to modernization. Our keynote speaker today is the president of Robert A. Siegel Auction Galleries in New York City, Mr. Scott R. Trepel. As head of this prominent auction house, Mr. Trepel has been involved in the sale of some of the most important and valuable collections of stamps and postal history ever to reach the market. On behalf of the American Philatelic Society and our co-sponsor, the United States Philatelic Classic Society, which has helped us in obtaining these outstanding speakers and exhibits, welcome to this symposium, the 11th Postal History Symposium. Please enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Here to introduce our keynote speaker for the 2020 Postal History Symposium is past APS president and member of the U.S. Philatelic Classic Society, Wade Saudi.
Thank you, Scott, and good morning, everybody. The keynote speaker for this year's Postal History Symposium is Scott Trepel, who will give you an overview of what to expect this week. Scott is an auctioneer and the owner of Siegel Auctions. He is a brilliant philatelist. He has garnered numerous awards for his writing and research. He has written on a variety of philatelic and postal history subjects and tried to bring together the scholarly and commercial aspects of philately so they are mutually beneficial. He has also tried to make the internet an engine of growth for the hobby and business. He believes in the expression, innovate or die. So the subject of this symposium reflects his own beliefs, and he is fully responsible for it. It's with great pleasure I introduce Mr. Scott Trepel.
Thank you, Wade. I think I said inebriate or die, but anyway, I appreciate the honor of being invited here by the organizers of the Postal History Symposium as keynote speaker. I speak to you from the 31st floor of our apartment building. I want to assure everyone that I am fully dressed. Things have gotten a little lax these days with virtual meetings, but you don't have to worry about anything. And I'm sure all of you appreciate that they've limited my time to 20 minutes and have control over my microphone. In fact, yesterday I timed my talk and it was only 7 minutes, and I feared that would prompt an onslaught of refund requests. So I spent more time thinking about things I wanted to talk about, and my presentation is in 2 parts. The first is an overview of what everyone else will be talking about this week, and I want to tie it together with the theme of innovation. The second part is an overview of collecting subjects or themes that I think collectors might enjoy embarking on. So that's the second part. But with the first, the title of the symposium puts the emphasis on the word innovation in the postal system. And I think we need to be clear that we're talking about the United States, although many of the ideas and innovations were seen in other places first. And we also need to define the time period of the classic era. And I would say the boundary starts in the early 17th century Tim O'Connor has established 1639 as a starting point, and it ends in the late 19th century, but it really doesn't end. And to call something classic, we're in just a matter of 18 years, the 1938 presidential issue is going to be 100 years old. So for some people, that's approaching classic. And I think we'll be talking about innovations that lead us to the end of the 19th century, but there's so much more after that, and it all ties into the theme of this week's symposium. Now, when we talk about a postal system, we're really talking about a business enterprise. And like most businesses, there are three fundamentals: logistics, customer service, pricing and payment. And I put pricing and payment together. So we've got logistics, customer service, and pricing and payment. And if you think about it, every decision or aspect of a business fits into one of these basic categories. I know many of you either run your own business, or you are CEO of a business, or very high up on the executive ladder. And I'm sure this is very familiar to you. So logistics determines the infrastructure and the staffing requirements. In terms of the post offices, how many stagecoaches are needed? What routes will they be on? Post offices, where will they be? What buildings to set up? These are all part of the logistics of running a postal enterprise. Customer service is responsive to the needs and the demands of the public and the market. So offering services such as city delivery, rural delivery, registrations, special delivery mail, these are all part of the customer service experience. And pricing and payment, well, the pricing part of it is established through careful cost analysis, and the payment methods are designed to for the customer's convenience and to boost sales. So a big question for the government was the post office a subsidized government operation, or was it to be run like a business where it was expected to break even? And these days, this is very much in the public news. Are taxpayer dollars supposed to pay for everything, or should they break even like any other business, or make a profit? So from its very beginnings, the U.S. postal system has been a business, and even though it's beholden to Congress, and for many years the postmasters were political appointees, as a business, almost every decision has been driven by these three fundamentals: logistics, service, and pricing. For example, the creation of star routes in 1845 was designed to shift the operation away from its dependency on stagecoaches to reduce costs. So suddenly, cost effectiveness was the driving force in their decisions. So over the next 5 days, you're going to hear from 14 speakers on 14 different subjects, and I'll give you an overview of that. And as I do, I'm going to keep coming back to those three fundamentals. So today we start at 2 p.m. with Dr. Tim O'Connor's presentation on the early origins of postal service on the American continent. Now, he's covering the period from 1639, and that's the establishment of Fairbanks Post, to 1776, which we all know is a big year. And Tim will paint the broad strokes of the colonial postal system, which provided essential communication links among the North American colonies and between them and their ruling government across the Atlantic. But during this early period, logistical demands were great and service was slow. Pricing not only had to support a cost-effective operation, but the diverse and fluctuating currencies presented special challenges, and Tim will get into all of that. Later today at 5:30, we leap ahead to 1847 with Gordon Eubanks's presentation on how the first general issue stamps fit into our developing U.S. postal system. Now, on the heels of the 1845 postal reforms that were inspired by Great Britain's reforms 5 years earlier, the 1847 stamps, they reflect important decisions on customer service and pricing. Lower the rates, and demand goes up and increases revenue. Give your customers an easy way to pay postage, and they'll by fixing an adhesive stamp, and they can mail letters at all hours and drop them in mailboxes. So simple and so effectively shown by Great Britain in 1840. It's amazing that it took 7 years for the United States government to adopt the same measures. Or maybe it isn't so amazing or surprising. But Gordon will cover the 1847s, and I'm sure he'll do it well. On Tuesday, we'll continue with Dr. Jim Milgram's presentation on railroads, which together with John Bush's talk later in the day on steam mail covers perhaps the most significant logistical innovation in the postal system's history, the use of steam-powered locomotives and ships to carry mail. Now think about it. The steam engine allowed the post office to achieve much greater regularity and reliability by releasing motion, the movement of the mails, from the constraints of wind and current. And again, a fundamental innovation that completely changed the nature of carrying the mails in the 19th century. Also on Tuesday is what I think will be a fascinating presentation by Tony Gallagher on the British colonial post office controversy. Now, Tony will delve into the political and social aspects of the postal system to show how innovation can reflect the minds of the people. The protests over the British Post are described by Tony as a dress rehearsal for the American Revolution. So this precipitates profound changes in our postal system. It's real Tea Party stuff. On Wednesday, Ken Lawrence will shed light on the late 19th century U.S. activities on Navassa Island. Now I remember Scott Gallagher, who some of you may have known. I remember Scott Gallagher collecting Navassa Island and that sparkle in his eye when he talked about its primary value as a source of guano. And Ken will explain how Navassa Island's significance and the significance of bat feces and guano led to the special postal operations. On Wednesday, we'll also hear from Fred Gregory on another island-based postal system, the Hawaiian mails from 1849 to 1859. Although a sovereign kingdom, Hawaii was closely linked to the U.S. postal system, and innovations on the U.S. continent directly impacted Hawaiian mails. So the post office in Paradise Perspective is not only a wonderful alliteration, it's an important part of this symposium. And finishing up on Wednesday is Dr. Yamil Khoury, who will delve into the post rider system of Spanish West Florida. And while much of the discussion up to that point will be about the British in America, or post office innovations that originated in England, let's not forget the Spanish colonial presence in Florida during the early 19th century. You know, the Spanish governors were highly skilled and experienced in setting up postal routes in their remote colonial territories. So Yamil will undoubtedly enlighten us on this subject. He is incredibly knowledgeable and a great speaker. I'm looking forward to that. And the three presentations on Thursday are very much focused on logistics, going back to the three fundamentals. We've got Bill DeWitt talking about intercity mail transportation modes. Bill Schultz talking about toll gates and toll houses on the post roads. And Steve Walsky takes us into the wilderness during the 1830s and 40s when fur traders and explorers paved the way for mail routes to the Pacific coast. One of my favorite movies is The Revenant, and every time I look at Steve's collection, I think of that movie and Leonardo DiCaprio's character eating a raw cow liver. And finally, on Friday, we'll have three more stimulating presentations. Trish Kaufman will help us understand how the Confederate Post Office functioned during the 5 years of the Civil War, overcoming material and manpower shortages, military obstacles, and the political divisions of war. Bob Harris and Diane DeBlois will have analyzed 4 19th century post offices to draw a picture of how innovation affected the average American post office and postal patron. Knowing Bob and Diane, I'm sure this is going to be a highlight of the 5 days. They are both brilliant philatelic scholars, and every time they tackle something, they bring a unique perspective to it. And last but not least, we have Mark Schwartz explaining how the New York Postmaster Provisional was the great stamp innovation. Personally, I would have put his talk right before you Gordon Eubanks on the subject of the 1847 issue. But Mark is in the caboose position, but his subject is extremely important because testing out the Postmaster Provisional issue in New York City paved the way for the first general issue, federal issue in 1847. Now, we have to remember how important it was to the growth of this country and to the durability of our democracy to have a postal system that conveyed information. All of the innovation we talk about this week made the great American experiment in democracy a success. If you don't have this book, Spreading the News by Richard John, you really should get it. It's a brilliant analysis of the history of the mails and how they influenced our democracy. I'm just going to quote, this is from an article, it's a quote by Dr. John. He said that the post office was the only entity with the organizational capability to circulate the information of public significance that was essential to sustain America's bold experiment with democracy. The only entity to circulate the information of public significance that was essential to sustain America's bold experiment with democracy. I can't imagine something that's more relevant to our democracy today. Now, as I said, I wanted to get into collecting areas that I think tie into what you'll be hearing this week. Because first of all, we're collectors. First and foremost, we're not just historians; we're collectors, and finding the stuff and putting it all together. That's what makes it exciting for us. And it's one of the great things about our collecting area is that you can have a tactile experience with the material that relates to the historical subject that you're collecting. Now, these are 10 of the concepts I thought about. Take it with a grain of salt, because remember, I'm someone who collects wine-related covers and covers about hanging people. But I think each one of these themes could be put into an exhibit, either virtual or an actual exhibit. You could collect the material. Some of it could be done with not a lot of money. Some of the collecting themes could be done with millions. So let me go through these 10 areas. The first, the postage stamp innovation. By starting with the 1842 City Despatch Post issue from New York, taking it through 1843 when Philadelphia's local posts introduced stamps. You've got the 1844-45 independent mail stamps. Finally, after the July 1845 postal reforms, we have the Postmaster's Provisionals. And then it leads to the first federal issue in 1847. So imagine a collection that surveys from that period, 1842 through 1847. What a great collection. And you could do it with a few $1,000s, or you could do it with millions of dollars. But it would be a fantastic overview of the origins of stamps in this country and the innovations. The second theme for a collection would be modes of transportation. Now, Dr. George Tyson has done this. It's a fantastic exhibit. It's available online. I don't know if he's shown it publicly, but others could do it too. So think about it. You define the covers that you're looking at by the way they were carried. So stagecoach, horse and rider, steam, locomotives, sailing vessels, steam vessels. Rather than consider purely the rate or the stamps on it, you look at how it was conveyed. And I think that's a fantastic collecting subject, and George Tyson has really done an amazing job, but I'd like to see other people do it as well. Along similar lines, the third suggestion I have is something related to the Erie Canal. Anyone who's a student of American history knows that the Erie Canal was a pivotal moment for this country's development of the western region. So why not look at the mail routes that developed along the Erie Canal? And of course, that ties in the Hudson River. So you have 1825 as a starting point, and think of all the things that happened as mail routes opened up along the Erie Canal, and new settlements could get their goods from Chicago and Michigan and all these areas back to the East Coast to be sold or exported. Great subject for a postal history collection. Number 4, the evolution of postal markings from the colonial period through 19th century machine cancels. Now, this is a big subject. This would have to be a survey collection. But imagine starting with the colonial markings on letters written by hand, and then you take it through the hand stamps. You progress to the period, pre-stamp period, when postal markings were there to indicate the post office of origin, the rate paid, whether it was paid or unpaid. Myriad markings in that pre-stamp period. Then after the introduction of stamps, how postal markings changed to serve a function of canceling stamps. And of course, you could include fancy cancels in that. Any one of these areas, by the way, would be a massive collection by itself. But if you do a survey collection, you could explain the whole evolution of postal markings in the United States postal system from the origins through the 19th century. Number 5, the political spoil system and the relationship between postmasters and presidential administrations. This one will take some thought and creativity. I just thought of the theme for it, but I have absolutely no idea what material would be put into it. Presidents actually appointed postmasters in the larger cities. Just a couple of weeks ago, I bought an Abraham Lincoln postmaster's appointment for a client. And my wife said, "What do you mean a postmaster's appointment? Lincoln signed it?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Wait, a president signed appointments to postmasters? How many did they have to sign?" I said, "Well, a fair number of them." And so in larger cities, presidents signed postal appointments. Now, we all know that the political spoil system, postmasters were usually had a political view. So Democratic administration would put in Democrats, a Republican administration would put in Republicans, Whigs would put in Whigs. So I'm sure there's something that could be done with the covers and postal markings to show how things change when presidential administrations change. Number 6, customer service at the post office. So the introduction of special services from the 17th century to the 19th century. And again, a survey collection. You're running a business. What are you going to do for your customers? And so you could tackle every important service-related innovation in the postal system and show an example of it with a cover. I think this would be a fascinating collection. And again, as a survey collection, it would really explain things to people in a general way and show them examples along with each innovation that took place. Number 7 is kind of an interesting one. It came to me as I was thinking last night, the shape of mail. The shape of mail, meaning the rise of envelopes in the 19th century. Now, when the postal system was reformed and we changed from charging a letter rate per each sheet of paper to just a rate based on weight, it opened the door for the use of envelopes because they would no longer be counted as a separate sheet of paper and charged an extra rate. So whatever you could fit in an envelope, as long as it was under a half ounce or an ounce, it was a single rate. So the introduction of envelopes occurred mid-century and expanded rapidly. Even in the 1847 and 1851 issue, there were a lot of folded letters. So you could explore the nature of envelopes and how they were manufactured in different ways. So Valentine's, the introduction of postal stationery with embossed stamps in 1853, the Valentines that were used, advertising on envelopes. Even the Pony Express had a special envelope made that was on very thin paper. This is documented. And it's on very thin paper so that the weight was kept under the quarter-ounce weight limit, which saved you $2.50. If you went over that quarter ounce, it became a $5 rate. So special envelopes were produced when the government made the Pony Express a contract mail operation. And, you could tie those into this subject of the shape of mail. Number 8, take a drive on postal routes. Now, this is an odd one, and I think it would best be presented in a digital format. So we all know that some post roads became main driving roads. The Boston Post Road is Route 1, which goes from here in New York on up to Boston. So imagine a video where you explain where you're driving, the road you're on, and how it relates to the postal roads that we're operating. You could even follow the Pony Express route. You could show examples of the Pony Express covers on those routes. You could follow the roads leading up to the gold mines of California. You could follow the roads up the Hudson River, which went along the river and carried a lot of mail, in addition to the mail that was carried on the water itself. So an unusual subject. I'm trying to be creative here, but I think that it lends itself to a video digital presentation, digital exhibit. Number 9, antebellum Southern railroads and the aftermath of the Civil War. So you take railroad covers, which honestly can be kind of boring because people just collect them by the railroad marking. Well, instead of just collecting them by the marking, you reconstitute the collection so that it traces the pre-war period, pre-Civil War period, shows the railroad operating at that point, then what happens during the war, and Confederate railroad covers are quite scarce. And of course, the destruction of railroads during the war was a key military strategy of both Union and Confederate forces. And then finally, the reconstruction of railroads in the post-war period, the Reconstruction period. I think this would be a fascinating new perspective on railroad covers, getting away from the alphabetical listing or the simple geographic listing or contract route listing, and talking really about how did the war disrupt the railroads and what happened during the war and after. And finally, number 10, immigration and the development of supporting post offices. This came to mind recently. I was looking at a group of covers, registered covers with 1869 stamps for an article I'm preparing, and I noticed how many were addressed to Italy from clearly Italian immigrants in California, and it led to a little study of the Italians that were in California in the 1860s and 70s. Now, there have been several waves of immigration: Irish, Swedish, German. All of these immigrants settled in different places throughout the United States, and around them developed postal operations, post offices. And you could collect the covers that show not only the postmarks and the stamps and the use by these people, but it also brings in something which I think is very important to the growth of our hobby, which is genealogy. And genealogy is a common denominator, and you see more and more articles tying the cover, the postal history itself, with the person. We see images of tombstones and buildings and homes that trace back to the person to whom the cover is addressed or from whom it was mailed. So genealogy, I think, is very important, and more, I think you'll see an expansion of our hobby into the genealogy hobby. Imagine people who study a name or their family member, and then they can suddenly buy a cover that's addressed to them. This is something that I think is an important growth area. So I would love to see a collection or exhibit that ties immigration, genealogy, and the development of the postal system together in a meaningful way. So I have no idea how much time I used. I hope that giving an overview of what you're going to hear this week was inspiring, and we'll keep you tuned in all week. I hope some of these ideas for building collections and exhibits cause you to think and maybe tackle them. You don't have to follow the path that's been laid already. You can come up with your own ideas. And I think every one of these that I just talked about is probably a new way of approaching it. So I think that concludes my part of it. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. It's a nice break from routine, and I wish everyone a healthy and happy symposium.
Thank you, Scott. That was a great presentation, and thank you for being our keynote speaker for the 2020 Postal History Symposium.